Okay, there we go. Okay, so it says I'm going to understand how realistic fiction stories from different cultures work. So last week, you guys all looked at a recording of me reading the story My Name is Yoon, which was what you were the first story you listened to start to think about what genre you might be studying and seeing what you noticed. So that actually is a realistic fiction story that has an emphasis on a different culture. We knew that it was all about Yoon moving from Korea to America and having to adjust to writing in English versus her native Korean writing. There are 3 more stories here that I've given you to watch. They're all like read aloud stories. The great thing about being able to watch them like this is you can pause them and carry on them on the video as you go. So you're going to be listening. The first thing that I would do is I would listen to all 3 just for fun. So I'd just say, okay, I'm going to listen to this one now and just listen to it, enjoy the story, just get into it, then do the next one, then the next one. And then after that, we know that we have a specific focus. So we want to understand how different cultures work. And we have a little help in our Google Drive. So it says always, sometimes, never table. That is the task that you're doing today. So I'm going to go from my schedule to the literacy folder. And I've actually put everything on one document so you could just work your way through. But the first one here, it matches what I said in my schedule, understand how realistic fiction stories work. This is because we can better understand the culture and the genre, and I can write a list of my noticings. So you have the links to all of the stories that are here, and then below that, just going to move you guys over, below that you have a little table to fill in. One column says always, the next says sometimes, and the other says never. So we're going to think about what we always see in these 3 stories, what we sometimes see in these 3 stories, and what we never see in these 3 stories. And I've done a little example for you to have a look at about what you might put in here. So my first example is I've noticed that in all these 3 stories, there's always a problem that they seem to have to overcome. They're all very different, but there was always some kind of a problem. I noticed that sometimes in some of those stories, I heard similes, but in other ones I didn't. So I couldn't put it in always and I couldn't put it in never. So I put sometimes. Some stories use similes to show feeling. So I noticed that in the Sahara story, and I thought, oh, I didn't hear that in some of the other ones, so I'll put that there. And then I said they never have magic in them. So even though they're stories from different cultures, we looked before at fables and traditional literature from different cultures a little bit before, and those included magic, but these don't include any magic in them. And that's perhaps something that you might already know, which is why I wrote it down, not you guys, because we are still in the realistic fiction genre that you guys have done before. We're just doing it with more of a focus on different cultures. So it's some of the same rules that you will have already seen before. So what I'd like you to do is watch those 3 new videos, and you can watch the video from last week too, and then fill in this table about what you notice is always in those stories, what is sometimes in those stories, and what is never in those stories. And I expect about 3 different points for each column. That would be ideal. Okay, so that's what you're going to be doing for literacy. I'll just close out of that for now. So I'll go back to my schedule to figure out what I'm doing for math, and I'll see that my WALT for the whole week is to recognize the equivalence between the decimal and fraction form in order and form and order, expressing fractions as percents. So that sounds very wordy, but what we know is we're looking at the similarities between fractions and decimals, and we're going to be comparing them. So I'm always going to go back to my drive, and I'll find my math stuff in the math folder, and I'll open up, just like how we do it in school, we start with the representation slides together. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And you're just not going to do all of them at once. We're actually spreading out these representation slides over the week. So You actually are only doing 1 to 11 today, and that's just like warming you up. The reason I've only given you a few today is because I want you to actually be properly looking at them and reading through them and solving any of the questions that are asked. So you'll see, for example, the second slide that you go onto, there's a few questions for you to answer. The way I'm going to be able to tell that you've done this work is each time a question pops up on the representation, just like how I might ask it in class, or I might get you to note it down in your book, you're going to do at home. So if a question pops up and says, what is a decimal? You're going to quickly jot down and explain to me what a decimal is. Why is it important? Why do we use decimal numbers? And what do we already know? So that's something you can straight off the bat start to answer as you're going through. That's the first thing that you're thinking of. Then you're having a look through what decimals actually are, which is like a recap, because you guys know this. And it even uses some of the methods we've done before, like when we're looking at a base 10 flat. You'll notice on this next slide that it says, what do you notice? You have to pay attention to those questions and answer them, because that proves that you're actually getting along as we would in class. So each time it pops up, I think that will be, it's true or false. So you're answering this. Is this a true statement or a false statement? What do you think this number is in numerals, which means the number, and words, and how do you know you're right or correct? So each one has a couple of questions that I want you to go through. So I think it stops right there, reading decimals. How about these? So you're to go through those and answer those questions on your own. And then from what I see, I'll comment on it. So if you're on the right track, I'll say, yeah, you're absolutely right. Or thanks for explaining that. Or you wrote those numbers correctly. Or I might say, have a look back at slide, whatever one it was that you were answering. So that's going to help me see how you go through the representation slides through the week. And you're each going to have different ones to do, or the next ones to do the next day. What I'd also suggest is if you find that you're flying through, the slides and you totally get it, I would go back to some of that method maths if you didn't complete it. So I know a lot of people did a few of each task that I set last week, but didn't actually finish it. And that's absolutely fine because it took time. But if you find, oh, today I finished these slides really, really quickly, then by all means, go back to your method maths and carry on practicing. And I'll keep checking on those 2 tasks that I assigned last week. Okay, so I'm just going to pause there to ask if anyone has any questions. Does anyone have any questions about the 2 tasks you're going to do today? No, understood. And I see that Jerry's just managed to get on. I actually recorded that piece of explaining, so I'll actually stop recording now. And